Programming. Our presenter today is the founder of Seva Fitness Academy, and he's author of Live Better, Die Slower, the key to making health and fitness finally stick. We're glad to have you today, Eric. Let's welcome Eric Romanak. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Bobby. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Please just shoot me a wave or something if you're having any technical issues. I wanted to start today by obviously just saying I'm a health and performance coach, which basically is kind of just another way to say I help people navigate health and fitness in a culture that gives us plenty of reasons not to be healthy, whether that's through exercising or diet or just, strategic lifestyle type of choices and how to navigate some things, like even reading labels in a grocery store. I kind of do it all there. And in the past 10 years of being in this business, I've really been working with human behavior. And I noticed that the biggest difference between those that succeed and those that struggle really kind of comes down to their particular story of health. And by this, I mean the ways they position the value of health in their minds and the benefits that health really has, whether they see them apparently or not. So whether you're a politician or a marketing person or an influencer in any fashion, to understand the power of controlling the message or the narrative is essential. Humans are psychologically predisposed to the power of storytelling, and it connects with us in the deepest recesses of our brain. And while we know this is typically being done to us, I think oftentimes we forget that we can use this same hardwiring, this system, to our own benefit. The words and concepts that we are exposed to and that we develop over time determines both our worldview and also contributes to many of our behaviors. Now, as you can probably imagine, I've been the bad guy many times as a coach. And talking about our health can be a hard conversation, but I promise this is a safe space and that health is accessible to us all. I truly believe that we all deserve to have it and we need it. And I want to be there to answer any questions today, and please feel free to throw any my way at any point. Q&A is always great. We'll definitely save some time afterwards for that. So lately I've been telling this story about something that happened to me earlier this year. One of my children, I have two teenagers, and one of my children was in a marching band competition, and it brought in all the counties from all over, and I went there and I went up in the stands, and I kind of noticed that there were a lot of kids who were struggling with their weight down on the field. I even noticed the drum majors were having a hard time climbing up on their big stages. The kids were moving the heavy equipment all across the field. And then I also looked up in the stands and I saw the parents struggling. They were not only struggling for themselves, obviously those who were struggling with their own weight going up the steps, but they were struggling watching their kids struggle. And this really, really pulled at my heartstrings. This was a really powerful experience that I was having. And then after the marching band competition, I drove home down Hinkleville Road, and you could see just alone all of the options that people had for fast food. It was just overwhelming. Fast food used to be something when I was growing up that it was a treat once a week. And now for many people, it's a daily occurrence, if not multiple times a day, where they're having food that we just can't break down on a molecular level. Our bodies are rejecting it. So when you take in all these factors, you also have to add into the fact that our kids are sedentary, we are sedentary, and this gives us a justifiable reason to almost be panicked about the current state of human health. But nevertheless, I want to be optimistic. A lot of this is quite avoidable, and that's what we're talking about today. But the facts are the facts. So since 1975, our obesity rate in America has tripled. 7 out of 10 of us are overweight. 4 out of 10 of us are morbidly obese. And obviously this is causing us quite an acute concern right now during these COVID times. But I want to give you a little bit of, how would you say, comparison. So for comparison, only 7% of Japanese people are overweight. And that's not obese, that's just overweight. So you can see that this is definitely a cultural issue that we are dealing with as Americans. On top of that, obesity is costing us $150 billion a year. It's a major contributor to heart disease, diabetes, stroke, cancer, osteoarthritis, sleep apnea, and a cascade of other issues. So we have to ask ourselves, really, how did we get here? So let's just start with a little bit of character development in our story. So it does us good to have a practical view of how this got started. So let's go back to right after World War II, and we were developing really rapidly as a country. We had just fought and won probably the most important war in the history of mankind. And with an explosion of the middle class, we were moving rapidly into a new consumer-based economy. Food production was beyond abundant, and we needed to make things last longer on the shelves to increase profit. So processed foods, or we could also call them consumable products, were positioned as a good solution for the busy modern family. And the golden age of advertising was making these products appear appealing to us on a whole new level. In addition to that, the American worker was now sitting more during the day, as well as undergoing mental stress more than physical. And on top of that, we had doctors who were helping us pick the right cigarettes. I just wanted to throw that in there. So fast forward to the 80s and 90s as we're moving down the timeline, and you're going to come to my story. Now, to be honest, the main reason I tell this story is to let people know more than anything how empathetic I am to their health struggles. I'm not just an exercise nut up here trying to shame people and be righteous. But when I was 6 years old, my parents got divorced, and I quickly turned to food. I was a latchkey kid, and food became my comfort mechanism for dealing with my emotions. Now, you can imagine when a 7-year-old starts to gain weight very rapidly, that leads to bullying. And on top of that, I was a bad athlete. The fact that I am in fitness right now is an amazing thing to me sometimes when I reflect on that. But as a child, that unhealthy relationship with food turned into obviously social problems and physical problems, which led to anger and anxiety and kind of propelled me into addiction as I was a teenager. And by the time I was in high school, I kind of thinned out a little bit, but I got taller. But by the time I got out of high school, all of my baggage crept up with me, and I gained my weight significantly. I was 80 pounds overweight. And by the time I was 21 years old, because I hadn't dealt with the stuff upstairs that caused me to turn to food, I found myself divorced, filed for bankruptcy, and I dropped out of college. But good news was on the way. I decided to pick myself up and try to change things. And I found some stability and got remarried. And that was just finding stability is the key for being able to move yourself into more of a developmental phase of life, which we often find health is. But, I found a spiritual side of things, kind of connected that way, and also sought some therapy. But nothing changed the game more than when I decided to get involved in my health and fitness. And now there are bigger reasons I do it. I do it for these people in the middle. I might not always be in this kind of shape. I'm in great shape right now, but I know that my self-health care is literally the deciding factor of my quality of life. And I don't see myself putting it down for any reason. But losing weight and being comfortable in your own skin is a very positive thing and a great motivator for people to start on their health journey. But the problem is weight loss alone will never be a strong enough reason to stay healthy. We have to really get into what is the real cost in order to sustain that healthy lifestyle. So we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper and create some more emotional content for our story narrative of health. One of the things, like many people, I am greatly driven by pleasure in acquiring some level of personal happiness. But what makes a happy person? And I actually asked myself that, and I studied up on it a little bit, and this is what I came up with. So happy people, first and foremost, have to have the brain chemistry of a happy person. There's things and processes that have to be going on inside the brain. Serotonin has to be present, norepinephrine, and a cascade of other things. There's a great book out there called Spark. It was written by a Harvard psychologist, and it really is all about how the brain benefits when it's healthy. But also on top of that, happy people did not have pain. If you are somebody who suffers from chronic pain, then you would understand that it pulls all of your resources throughout the day, makes life a little bit harder. And typically people who are in pain are not in the happiest of the mental space. Also, happy people are resilient. They bounce back from stress quicker. I've never met anybody who feels like they're getting their butt kicked by life and thinks that everything's okay and they are happy because of it. Also, happy people have energy and vitality. They have enough gas in the tank to pursue the things that they enjoy and that make them happy and what they need. Happy people also have a sense of agency. And the best way, for those of you who haven't heard of that concept, the best way I heard it was actually saying that you feel more like the hammer instead of the nail in life. Also, happy people have a certain degree of confidence, and they also feel a certain amount of contentment. But more importantly, they don't have regret, and that's a key differentiation to make. They're not sitting around wishing that their lives were something else. Also, happy people have higher levels of self-respect, as well as purpose and clarity in their lives. Well, it just so happens all of these things that make happy people were also the benefits of a healthy diet and exercise. So when you exercise, you actually start to create those mood-enhancing chemicals in the brain. It's a natural byproduct, and more health professionals are prescribing exercise first and foremost. Absence of pain, well, if you are exercising properly and you've maybe gotten locked in with a personal trainer or somebody who can show you kind of the ropes, you're going to not have pain. You're actually going to be armoring your joints and keeping yourself out of the hospital for things that typically can happen to people as they age and don't take care of themselves. Also, when it comes to resilience, we have to realize that on a base level, exercise is self-induced stress. So what we do, we exercise, we stress out our nervous system a little bit, and our nervous system and body level up to be able to handle what used to be a harder stress now doesn't feel so bad. And we bounce back quicker, we get back out there and do some more. So exercise literally is the act of creating resilience. Also, when you exercise on a cellular level, you create more mitochondria. Now, mitochondria is like the battery of the cell. So when you exercise, your bloodstream, your chemical processes, your nervous system essentially goes from like driving a 4-cylinder to a V6 or a V8. So you always see those annoying people who got fit all of a sudden. It's because inside they are jacked up on their own personal energy. It's just a natural byproduct of exercise. As far as a sense of agency is concerned, feeling like you're more the hammer instead of the nail, let's say you're a weightlifter. You've got that weight to pick up off the ground, so you go and pick that up. Well, guess what? You did that. That's something that goes in your mental cookie jar and makes you feel like I'm in control. I did that. If you're a runner, you go out and run a certain amount of miles. So exercise produces a very, very continual sense of agency and control over your own life, which obviously is going to give you a higher degree of confidence. And people who are not missing their workouts, who aren't making bad decisions, have less regret and more contentment. Now, the next thing, self-respect, I try to say with empathy, but it's something we don't address in this culture, but self-respect equals self-care. You can say you respect yourself, but if you treat yourself poorly on a physical level, you have to kind of question if you've connected those dots inside. So I do like to remind people of the importance of self-care when it comes to self-respect. And then finally, people who have adopted a self-care regimen to them obviously have a deep sense of purpose of why they do it, and they're very, very clear and not confused moving forward. Now, when it comes to addressing our own health and making those changes, we often find ourselves in a state of paralysis. And whether it's a lack of motivation or confusion on what to do, what to eat, making time in our schedules, or old injuries, we often come to a point that brings us to a halt. We've all been there. We tend to really get stuck on the periphery, though, letting the details bog us down. So aligning ourselves with the true value and necessity of health on a personal level is what cuts right through and gives us better decisionary strength in making our behaviors. The more personal and emotional we make this story of health for ourselves, actually the easier it is to align ourselves and things kind of just lock in place for us. So we have to make this personal. Now, the first thing we have to get straight for a lot of my clients when I talk to them the first time, it seems almost too simple, but if we don't understand this, we have no foundation to really rest on. And that is that first and foremost, you are a biological machine. So just like when you see a vintage car on the road that's in great shape, it's because somebody took care of it. We require mechanical maintenance, good fuel, and we have to be driven responsibly as well. So if you treat yourself like a race car, then you will behave more like a race car. And same thing as if you treat yourself like $1,000 jalopy, then that's the type of performance that you'll get from your human machine as well. But I want to think even bigger when it comes to health. And if we zoom out, we have to see that health is actually a model of human optimization. There are many models that people choose to live their lives by, but any model will deteriorate if it's not guided first and foremost by the principles of health. So let me offer you the best definition I've ever heard of health given to me by one of my coaches. And he says, remove the restrictive forces and develop the driving forces. Now, this equation can be applied to improve virtually any situation, but we have to realize that all these aspects of being a human being are interwoven together as well. So if you just start with like financial health, first of all, if we don't have our base needs taken care of, then we're not going to be able to focus on our physical health. As we just talked about in one of the previous slides, if my physical health is deteriorating, I can imagine that my mental health will not be supported as well. If I'm not feeling mentally healthy, I'm going to withdraw and not be as much a part of society as well. If I'm not being productive in society, then I'm not adding value to the environments, whether they're smaller environments or larger environments as we zoom out. If I'm not participating in the creation of a healthier environment, then I'm not seeing a bigger picture. And that's what spirituality is. It's the ability to see this interconnectedness. So you can see that just by neglecting one of these facets, we tend to have this negative spiraling downward effect in some of the others. Another foundational value of health really requires us to understand that everything we do as a human machine requires energy. So simply, the energy we have, the more we can do. When we are sick or in any state of health decline, we are essentially bleeding energy. Energy is the source of our focus. It's even the source of our character, and definitely the source of our ability to pursue the things that we need and hold dearest to us. In other words, vitality is our most vital resource. Now, ironically, so many of us actually associate health with negative things. It's hilarious, but I see it more and more. So think of it this way. Going on a diet, very restrictive, right? Exercise is uncomfortable. You go to your healthcare provider when you are sick. So when you appreciate your health as both a model to guide you and also a source of your vital life force, you begin to see with some fresh eyes that all the things you are really adding to your life instead of taking away and losing. And that's a big switch to flip. Now, also, unfortunately, it's the execution of health where a lot of people with good intentions as well as intellectual understanding will still struggle. But to be honest, we tend to make it much harder than it needs to be. The trick is we have to actually embrace our hardwiring. And oddly enough, the same hardwiring that makes us have the bad habits is the same hardwiring that will actually save us. Humans are designed to seek reward. The extreme willpower that people think they need is always short-lived unless it's perhaps following a major life event. But also that willpower plan is just not a good plan. When we strategically and incrementally make substitutions that ignite the reward centers of our brain, we actually end up enjoying the process more, and it becomes more doable and more sustainable. So as a coach, I basically trick people's brains into thinking that this new small behavior that we added actually is a positive feeling. And you would think it's real easy to do, but we don't do it on our own. We have somebody point it out to us, shine a light, ask us some questions, and next thing you know, your brain has engaged that reward center, which is extremely powerful in behavior change. Now, another thing about the implementation of these new healthy behaviors is what we call being process-oriented. So becoming process-oriented seems to be definitely one of the biggest keys in making those long-term goals to stick. Having goals themselves is a great thing, but we tend to forget that goals need to unfold in their own time. We set a goal, we set a timeline, and a lot of times that can be very detrimental. So becoming process-oriented instead of product-oriented is a key in making health and fitness finally stick. One thing that I see a lot of, I'll see somebody who wants to run a race, maybe a half marathon or a marathon, and they come to me and they'll say, when's the date of the race? It's 3 months away. Okay. Well, that may be an exciting goal and a very virtuous goal, but a lot of times if they've never run before, that's not a very healthy goal. So they may cross the finish line in 3 months, but the cost can be very, very high. So getting people to think differently that health is not a destination, but it's a direction is another one of those strategic flips that definitely helps us stay on the track. Just think of it this way, the product is always a natural byproduct of the process, but not the other way around. It's like putting the cart before the horse and being target fixated. And that can lead to a variety of things like being blindly obsessive and neurotic. So shifting to this mindset alone can also reduce a lot of anxiety and unnecessary pressure as you're moving on towards your health goal. But another chapter in this story of health would be titled Movement is Life. Simply put, things that are moving are dying less, and things that are not moving are dying quicker. Unfortunately, as important as fitness is, the industry itself often pushes people away. Our understanding of fitness is misplaced at best and an exclusive elite club at worst. Instead of fitness being seen as the necessary maintenance of the human machine, it's usually seen as an extension of athletics. So remember that, we inhabit the most sophisticated machine in the known universe, and our physical education consisted of learning how to play sports. That's pretty bad if you've never been identified as an athlete. So when you get out of high school and you don't have to take PE class anymore, you're not really necessarily going to be all that excited about maybe going to the gym. But even if somebody is brave enough to finally go into the gym, they're often doing exercises that their bodies can't even handle, and they're they're comparing themselves to maybe people who are already genetically predisposed to build muscle and lose weight fast, as well as a lot of people just spend hours and hours and hours in the gym. They have devoted their lives to their fitness. And these, comparison's the thief of joy, and we all are suffering from that. So going into something that is not appropriate for us can also cause that exhaustion, frustration, and even injury that sets us back from becoming healthier and more fit as well. Another detrimental strategy is the all or nothing mindset in our story, which is usually like an emotional slingshot of feeling ashamed of ourselves. It's both unrealistic and bad for our mental health. So to be very clear, I am not a fan of sainthood. While I do enjoy my level of fitness, I still like to put things in my body that are not good for me. And I like to lay on the couch a lot. So the all or nothing approach is never sustainable. And those little inevitable slip-ups that we always will make take their toll, and we end up becoming demotivated by our perceived failures. And health is really about playing offense. It's about learning how to put points on the board. So much of our health care is reflexive and defensive. Well, you can't win a game if you are always playing defense. So we start putting some points on the board, and we realize over time, as those points add up, that health is not about having a perfect record. It's about having a winning record. But on the biggest scale of all, health is what holds us together. And the abundance of our health is what sustains our higher nature as a species. I named my business Seva Fitness because Seva is an ancient word that means to serve. Right before I opened my doors, I found this quote by a guy named Samuel Johnson, and it said, "To preserve health is a moral duty, for health is the basis of all social virtues. We can no longer be useful when we are not well." Now, as a parent, that really, really just hit me right in the gut. Obviously, I have a need that I have to take care of these little people that I'm bringing into the world. And if I'm hurting, then I'm not going to be my best self. Everyone in our lives, bottom line, benefits from our level of health. You are the hub of the wheel of your life. And it's not selfish to think that. It's actually the exact opposite. To say I can't make time for self-care is actually to say I can't make time to help the ones I love to the best of my ability. It's a hard pill to swallow, but the math does really, really add up. It's just not a dominant cultural philosophy that we have decided to share with each other. And finally, to pull the final nail out of the coffin, yes, I said that right, is to realize that we don't want to be a part of the problem, because ultimately a healthy society is made up of healthy individuals. So we look at the state of our world right now, when we look at the value we've placed culturally on health, and we kind of start to see, oh, all right, well, maybe that model of health is something we should consider. And it starts with us, personal responsibility. Last thing I want to share with you is just this one little thing. I just love it so much. But this picture right here is representing a domino effect. So according to math and science, you started with a 2-inch domino right there, that guy all the way on the left of your screen. And you kept doubling the size of the domino. By the time you got to 18 exponents, your domino would now be the size of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And as you can see, 23 dominoes, it'd be the Eiffel Tower, or not 23 dominoes, 23 growth spurts. And after 31 exponents or 51, you're at Mount Everest. And then after 57 exponents, you would be at the distance to the moon. Now, if you push that domino, it will actually knock all of the other dominoes over. And there's a smaller scale version of this experiment on YouTube you can look up. But I found this studying business and entrepreneurship. And the guy was basically saying, you need to identify what that 2-inch domino is in your life. And then from there, all the other things will eventually fall into place. I believe from the deepest recesses of my brain and my heart, that our personal self-health care is that 2-inch domino that will knock over all of the other things in our lives into a positive direction. So I really, really appreciate you guys taking your time out of your day to listen to me. And I really, really would love to answer any questions that you have. And if you want to reach out to me independently, you can find me on Facebook or sevafitness.com or livebetterdieslower.com. So thank you very much, and I'll hang around for any questions.
Eric?
Yes.
My name is Demestra. I work at the library, and I
Hi.
have a question. Hi. I have had major foot surgery a week ago, so I'm going to be immobile. It'll probably be about a 3-month process before I'll actually really be able to actually do any form of exercise. And I'm just trying to figure out, what can I do now that being that I am kind of physically immobile and can't actually do a full workout?
Well, so I'm going to challenge your definition of exercise a little bit. Most people, would probably equate exercise as being on their feet, and the majority of it is. But there are definitely ways that you can move your body sitting in a chair or lying on your back that could be very beneficial while you're in your healing process. I would probably say, we do these things called joint mobility. So every joint in your body has a range of motion that it's designed to be able to go into. Now you see me doing this really weird little neck glide thing. Most people can't do that anymore. It's not that they don't have the capacity of it, but it's that they have sensory motor amnesia and just haven't used that range of motion. Another thing to consider is like if something's behind you, you usually turn around and go reach for it. When in actuality, our shoulder is designed to reach back there, but we never do it. So simple things like moving your head around in the ranges of motion that it's supposed to do, moving our shoulder blades in all their ranges of motion. Those are probably some of the simple, most beneficial exercises that we have not adapted and embraced as a fitness culture, that are very kind of low impact and can have a great, great benefit to making you feel good in the healing process, because it gets the juices flowing and it doesn't allow the body to become stagnant.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the question.
We have Adult Services Manager Sarah with us today, and she might want to share, there's a program coming up that's going to talk about mobility, especially when we've all been working from home.
Hey there. Hey, Eric, I enjoyed your presentation. Thank you. We will have something similar to this with a couple of physical therapists from Atlas Physical Therapy, talking about tech neck and just how to hold your body, some exercises you could be doing. We are all, so many of us, working from home right now. I'm sitting actually at the moment, my laptop is on an old sewing machine, not the most ergonomically supportive environment. And so we're just going to have some experts talking about what we can be doing now just to kind of make ourselves feel better. And that will be, it's a week from tomorrow evening.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I definitely recommend that.
Do you have any, what are some suggestions that you have for exercising right now when we can't go to gyms or classes or whatever, beyond, of course, walking? Or do you think walking is sufficient? It always just feels like it's not very much, and that you should be doing more. But beyond like walking, and I've been doing some online yoga classes, but other than that, I don't really have much else. Do you have any other suggestions?
It's a fantastic question. And a couple things that we always need to consider is, what are we trying to accomplish? If we're just trying to accomplish, that being active and feeling good, then it doesn't really take much. Walking is actually one of the greatest exercises you can do. If you haven't been active for a long time and decide now is the time that you want to kind of get involved, I definitely don't recommend starting hard. I never recommend that. If you get locked in with there's a lot of personal trainers who are doing stuff online, obviously, and they can assist you and help guide you. But a lot of times, if you have been exercising, just moving your own body weight is incredibly stimulating, and most people don't do it very well. So if you can find some things that are more technically challenged, that really, yoga is a great example a lot of times where they tell you to, push your knee in a certain direction and sit up tall at the same time. That really, really not only gets the body feeling great, but, stimulates the mind. I do think that if we were to, I'm not a big fan of extreme sports, but I do think there's a lot of value in resistance training, lifting weights, keeping the bones and the muscles healthy. I don't care how much you lift up off the floor, just the fact that you know how to lift something heavy off the floor. And that has a lot of benefit. And like you are doing the mobility stuff, that's the king of all exercise. If you can't get your shoulders in the right alignment, then if you go to put something heavy on top of that pressure, that misalignment turns into an injury. So getting the body to be able to move in its ranges of motion is the foundation of all things that you can build fitness off of, whether it's weight loss or muscle growth or performance in an athletic event.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Eric, your message very much tied into, May is Mental Health Month, and the message very much tied into Mental Health Month. I like your tie-in between the fitness, the healthy eating, and how it works with the mental wellness.
Thank you very much. I'm a big believer in it. It saved my life. It was a game changer.
We are going to hang around for a few moments. If anyone has any questions for Eric, we thank him so much for being here today. Very informative presentation. Want to let you know the next McLib live presentation will be next Wednesday at 3:00, and we'll be working with Chad Lampy, Station Manager with WKMS. We appreciate you all being here today.